Hey everybody, it's Movie Buff Beth and I'm back again with another Everything I Watched video. Today I'm going to be talking about everything that I watched in the month of January 2021. Finally a new year, time to really dive into those movie resolutions, if you will. Don't know if any of you guys make those, but every year I try to sit down and write a few resolutions for my movie watching and decide what I want to accomplish throughout the year. It's kind of a fun spin on New Year's resolutions because they're resolutions that I have a pretty good chance of keeping throughout the year because I love to watch movies. Watched a lot of good stuff this month. I watched 83 movies total, 64 of which were first time watches, 19 were rewatches, so lots of new stuff to talk about today. One thing I'll say about my watches is a lot of them were on streaming. I've had a lot of downtime at work lately, so I've been able to watch some movies there, so I've caught up on a lot of my streaming watches. And I've also just found a lot of stuff I wanted to check out on streaming, so that's cool. I love physical media, but my first love is of course movies and film, and I will watch them any way that I can. You know, physical media is definitely my first choice, but if they're available on streaming or something, it's a great way to check them out before you pick them up on physical media, or a lot of the times lately they're not available on physical media, which is unfortunate, but either way, lots of new watches. Before I dive into what I watched, I'll tell you guys what some of my 2021 movie resolutions are, and please let me know in the comments below if you guys make any movie resolutions, and if so, what they are, because I'd love to hear it. So first of all, I always try to set up a amount of first time watches that I want to get throughout the year. I try to at least, at the very minimum, watch 500 first time watches. Last year I barely made it. I got to 504, but thankfully with some of the quarantine time in December I was able to get to 500. I think the most that I've done in a year is about 600 first time watches. So this year I kind of set myself up to do even better and watch 750 films for the first time. I don't know if I'll reach this, but it's going to be really fun to kind of try and see if I can get there. Based on what I watched in January, I am on pace to meet that goal right now of 750 first time watches. Now whether or not I can keep it up the next 11 months, we will see, but it's a really fun challenge for me to try to watch lots of new films. You know, obviously we have a huge collection, so this is also a goal to help us get through a lot of what we have in our collection that we haven't seen, which of course is a lot. And there's just always films that I want to get to and want to experience. Of course I love to rewatch movies as well, but first time watches are just so much fun, and I feel like I'm really accomplishing something by watching something for the first time. I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but yeah, so that's my first goal, is to watch 750 films for the first time. And then my overall goal for the year is to watch 1,000 movies. I've never done this before. Last year I watched 692 films total. So this is obviously a huge goal, and going on that, I have watched enough movies in the month of January to be on pace for this overall goal. So basically it would be 750 first time watches at least, and 250 rewatches. So yeah, I'm on pace for that. Again, this is kind of a really outlandish goal for me, but if I was able to do it, I think it'd be really awesome. But it's not a huge deal if I don't make it. It's just a fun challenge for me. Let me know if you guys have similar goals like that set up for 2021. Another one of my resolutions is to watch more foreign films. I have kind of a running list going of at least 100 that I want to check out this year for the first time. But I also do need to go back and rewatch some of my favorites as well. I love foreign films. I've found a lot of international films that I've really loved. I just find myself not making the time for them as often. You know, maybe it's just I don't think about them as often, but there's so many hidden gems out there in the international film market that I need to get to. And 2021, I really want to focus on foreign films and finding new ones that I love. So if you guys have some recommendations for my foreign film watch list, please let me know. You can always check out my Letterboxd to see what I've watched already if you want to recommend a first time watch to me. And I'm also keeping track of all of these goals on Letterboxd if you want to take a look there. I have my first time viewings list as well as my rewatch list. And then I also have my foreign film watch list, so please let me know if you have some recommendations for what I should put on that list. And I've already watched a couple this year, haven't done as many as I was hoping to do in the month of January. But I watched a couple in February for sure. So yeah, definitely need to watch more foreign films. And then 2 more of my goals that I thought of. I want to watch all of the A24 catalog, one of my favorite distributors. They put out a lot of great films, and it would just be fun to say that I've seen them all, and I also kind of want to rank them at some point. I do own them all, so definitely need to sit down and watch them all. And another thing that I'd like to do is completely watch all of one of my labels, meaning like watch all of my Arrow Video titles, watch all of my Vinegar Syndrome titles, something like that. Not sure which label I'm going with. I'm kind of leaning towards Vinegar Syndrome because I feel like it'd be a really fun and crazy ride to sit down and watch all of those films. Unfortunately, I haven't seen all of them yet, but it would definitely be a really fun goal to do. If I were to do that though, you know, once I decide on a label, I'll watch them all and then I'll do like a complete collection video. Yeah, I'm not sure which label I'll do. Let me know if you guys have any recommendations for what I should do. But yeah, those are kind of my movie resolutions, if you will. Just some things I want to do through 2021. Again, none of it's super serious, just fun challenges to set out for myself and to kind of direct my watching for the year. And, you know, I always say I try not to make movie watching a chore. You know, movie watching is my favorite thing to do. It's my favorite hobby. I never want it to feel like a chore, like I have to get around to doing this. So, you know, if throughout the year it starts to feel that way, I'll obviously take a step back. But as of right now, it's been a ton of fun to try to keep up the pace and watch all of these movies. And obviously time won't always allow for this amount of movie watching. You know, work could get busy again and whatnot, but you know, it's a fun challenge to have, so I'm going to try to keep to it. So that's enough about my 2021 movie resolutions. Again, let me know what your guys' are in the comments below. Real quick before I dive into anything else, I want to say thank you guys so much for helping us reach 1,000 subscribers. Andrew and I are both super excited, and we just thank you guys so much for your support. We'll have more on that later. Coming towards the end of the week, or maybe next week, we're going to do a 2021 collection overview video. We've changed a few things in our setup, so we want to show you guys, and we want to thank you guys so much for your support. As always, it's meant the world to us. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and dive into what I watched in the month of January. If you guys are new to my Everything I Watched series, I go through literally everything that I watched in a certain month. I will give you a rating, and I'll talk about whether or not I'd recommend it to you, or, you know, just my general thoughts on the film. So the first 4 watches of the year were actually rewatches. Andrew and I were both home on a rare Saturday together, so we decided to watch a movie series that we hadn't watched in a few years, and that is the Hunger Games series. And we checked them out on 4K. I can't remember if we watched them on 4K before, but it was a good experience. I really enjoy these films. They're all at least 4-star movies to me. The first one I give 4 out of 5. And then we watched Catching Fire. This one's by far my favorite of the series. It's also my favorite book. I really enjoyed this movie. Again, they're all really enjoyable, but this one's the most enjoyable to me. I give this one 4.5 out of 5. And I do realize I probably rate these a little more than a lot of people do, but I really do enjoy these movies. I think that they're a lot of fun and really well done. And I remember reading the books and going to see all these in theaters, and just I've always had a lot of fun with this series. So of course we watched Mockingjay Part 1. This one I give 4 out of 5 as well. And then we watched Mockingjay Part 2, another 4 out of 5 film for me. I think they did a really good job with this series. They look great on 4K. If for some reason you guys have never seen them, definitely check them out. We have another rewatch here, one of my favorite movies of recent years. It definitely does not get talked about enough, and that is 2017's Brigsby Bear. This is just a fantastic movie. If you guys have never heard of it, definitely look it up, check it out. It's well worth your time. Basically, this kid is kidnapped when he's very young, and he grows up with a very eccentric family, but he doesn't even realize that he was kidnapped because he was so young when he was taken. He grows up with these 2 parents that are very eccentric, and the father, played by Mark Hamill, makes these Brigsby Bear specials, like a TV show for him, to kind of teach him basic ways about life. And he thinks that it's this big fandom, like he gets on his computer and talks to people on a forum about it, but really it's just something that his dad makes for him, and he's unaware of that. But of course they eventually find him and get him back with his real parents, and it's kind of his journey of moving away from this reality that he once thought was, you know, the actual reality of his life, into this new reality. And it's just a really charming, feel-good movie. I don't want to say too much more about it because I don't want to ruin it, but such a good film. It stars Kyle Mooney from SNL, and he's so great here. Just, again, just a heartwarming, touching movie, really funny, and if you like filmmaking, you'll definitely enjoy this film. This is a 5 out of 5 film for me, guys. And then we have another rewatch here. This is 2013's The To-Do List, starring Aubrey Plaza and Bill Hader. This is basically a teen sex comedy, but probably one of the better ones in recent years. This got a lot of hate, but I think that this one is a lot of fun. Some really funny scenarios. Aubrey Plaza's great, as always. This is directed by, let's see, her name's Maggie Carey, who at the time was married to Bill Hader. And I think she does a great job. This is loosely based on some of her actual experiences growing up. Yeah, just a really funny sex comedy. If you guys have never seen it and you like this genre, definitely check it out. I give this a 4 out of 5. These next two films that we watched, we actually were lucky enough to get screener copies of them, so we were able to check them out a little bit sooner than the general public. These are two movies that have been kind of pushed back again and again due to the pandemic, and two that I wanted to see for a long time. The first one is 2020's Minari. This is a film that takes place in the 1980s. It stars Steven Yeun from The Walking Dead. And it's about a young Korean family who moves from the West Coast to rural Arkansas and kind of the struggles that they face as a family. And this film it's so very beautiful. It's very difficult to put the words together to describe the experience of this film, but it's just so well done. The performances are all fantastic, especially the child performances. The 7-year-old boy is so very good. You definitely feel for him and the experiences that he's having with his family. But yeah, just very well written, well directed, definitely worth your time. I believe it releases wide release in theaters sometime this month in February, so definitely keep an eye out for it. I also think it'll probably be coming out on VOD at some point. But this is a fantastic film, great directorial effort from Lee Isaac Chung. Definitely recommend checking this one out. This one will definitely get some Oscar nominations. 5 out of 5 stars for me. Then the next film we watched, also from 2020, is Nomadland, directed by Chloe Zhao, starring Frances McDormand. Another film that is just absolutely beautiful to watch, a beautiful experience. First of all, I have to say I have loved Chloe Zhao's other films, especially The Writer. I think it's a fantastic movie. More on that later probably. But Nomadland follows a very similar pace where you're following a character kind of going through their life and just experiencing what it's like to walk in their shoes. It's about a woman in her 60s who embarks on a journey through the Western United States after losing everything in the Great Recession, living as a van-dwelling modern-day nomad. Doesn't sound super exciting, but trust me when I say this, it's well worth your time. Frances McDormand is fantastic as always, and I just love the direction by Chloe Zhao. This is definitely one that you guys should check out, and a 5 out of 5 film for me. Also, I know this movie will be coming to Hulu sometime in February, so definitely keep an eye out for that. It's well worth your time, definitely check it out. Next movie we watched was 2019's A Rainy Day in New York. This is directed by Woody Allen. We actually watched a few Woody Allen films in January. This one has gotten pretty negative reception. Didn't really know much about it going in, but all I knew is that a lot of people were not enjoying it. I have to say that I actually kind of did enjoy this one. It definitely reminds me of the earlier Woody Allen style. Timothée Chalamet kind of plays almost a very Woody Allen character, if you will. Definitely reminded me a lot of like Annie Hall, where you just get the fast-talking lead character who you can't help but like. And yeah, this has a great cast. You have Timothée Chalamet, Elle Fanning, Selena Gomez, Jude Law, Diego Luna, and Liev Schreiber. It's nothing groundbreaking or anything, but I think if you have enjoyed other Woody Allen films, you might enjoy this one. I might have enjoyed this one more than most, but I definitely say give it a look if you like other Allen films. And this one I give a 3.5 out of 5. This is a long overdue first watch, and that is 1985's Cocoon, directed by Ron Howard. This one is pretty hard to come by in the US on Blu-ray. It's been out of print for a while, but Eureka released it in the UK, so I decided to check it out that way. And this film did not disappoint. It's a very cute sci-fi film, if you will. You just love the lead characters, these older people who live in a retirement home and basically find the fountain of youth. But I thought it was really a heartwarming sci-fi film, if you will. You got some great performances. You got Steve Guttenberg in there, who I love. But yeah, this one I give a 4 out of 5. This next one is one that's been on my watch list for a long time. I've kind of put it off because I've heard it's, you know, such a dense film to watch, something really hard to process, and sometimes you just are not in the mood for a film like that. However, this night I was, and that is 2008's Synecdoche, New York. This is directed by the great Charlie Kaufman, who could be somewhat divisive, but I've enjoyed everything I've watched from him so far, whether it be directed or written by him. And this film was no exception. It definitely is very dense. It's definitely a lot to chew on. It's one that I'm going to have to go back and watch several times to pick up on everything. But on first watch, I'd give it a 4.5 out of 5. And if you guys like movies that are very confusing and have lots of layers and are not quite what they seem, definitely check out Synecdoche, New York. It's well worth your time, but I enjoyed this one a lot. And we have another Woody Allen film here. This one came out in 1979, and that is Manhattan. You know, as always, it has a great cast. Woody Allen, if he's good at nothing else, he's good at finding a great cast to put in a film. I mean, it stars Woody Allen, Diane Keaton, Michael Murphy, Mariel Hemingway, Meryl Streep, and Anne Byrne. Another really solid Woody Allen film. I definitely enjoy his 70s and 80s films more than his newer films, but yeah, this is a great one. I give this 4 out of 5. The next movie I watched was on HBO Max, and that's 1994's Muriels Wedding. My sister has recommended this one to me endlessly throughout our lives, and I finally sat down and watched it. Glad that it's available on HBO Max. This stars the great Toni Collette in one of her earliest roles, if not one of her very first roles. It takes place in Australia, where Toni Collette is from. Just a very quirky, cute film. You definitely feel for Muriel and her experiences, and you just want things to go well for her. But lots of laugh out loud moments. Great performance from Toni Collette. Probably one of my favorite performances from her, to be honest. This one I give a 4 out of 5. I definitely need to pick it up soon. Hopefully we can get a Blu-ray release sometime in the future. This next film we watched on Netflix, and that's 2018's Private Life. This is one that's been on my watch list since it came out at Sundance a few years ago. This stars Kathryn Hahn and Paul Giamatti, two very underrated actors in my opinion, and I was very excited to see a film in which they were the leads, because often these two are supporting characters, far too often if you ask me. I think that they're both just wonderful actors. And this film, very understated performances from our two leads. A story that tackled a subject that does not get talked about much, about the struggle to get pregnant and the difficulties in being kind of an older couple who are still, you know, trying to get pregnant naturally, when a lot of their similar aged friends and family are just encouraging them to adopt, and they're met with a lot of challenges along the way. But this is a very good film. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I would give this one a 4.5 out of 5. Definitely one of my favorite Netflix originals. And speaking of which, I'll be doing a video in which I talk about all of my favorite Netflix originals pretty soon, so keep an eye out for that. Next film we watched was 1990's Dick Tracy. This is directed by Warren Beatty. Never seen this one before, didn't even know too much about it, to be honest. I think that this is kind of an acquired taste. It definitely wasn't my cup of tea. It was very animated and cartoony in its style, and I didn't connect with it super well, but I can definitely see why it has its fans. I'd probably give this one a 2.5 out of 5. Maybe I'll watch it again down the road when I might be in a better mood for it, but yeah. Dick Tracy. Next movie I watched was 2012's No One Lives. This stars Luke Evans. This one is one that had been recommended to me as kind of a sleeper hit from the last decade. And it definitely was. It was a very gruesome thriller horror movie that took a lot of turns that I really wasn't expecting. But if you like really gory, gruesome thriller movies, definitely check this one out. I give this a 4 out of 5. Next movie we watched was 2014's Magic in the Moonlight. Yet again, another Woody Allen film. This one is one that also gets a lot of hate. I think a lot of his filmography is pretty divisive, but again, the cast in this movie is great. You have Colin Firth, Emma Stone in the lead roles. You also have Marcia Gay Hayden, Hamish Linklater, lots of great people in there. This one was alright. I didn't think it was his best, but the cast elevated it a bit for me. I'd probably give this one a 3 out of 5. The next movie I watched was on HBO Max, and that's 1985's After Hours. This is directed by the great Martin Scorsese, and I'm so glad that I finally sat down and checked this film out. I have to say, this is probably one of my favorite Scorsese films. Not enough people talk about this one. This is a great dark comedy from Scorsese. This is not a genre that he delves into often, but I definitely think he should more. He did such a great job with this one. Our lead character, he lives a pretty boring and drab life working in an office, and one night in New York City he decides to go out and meet with this mysterious woman that he met at a diner, and one thing after another keeps happening to him and making it harder and harder for him to get home. And at the end of the movie, you're just gonna say, man, you really probably should have just stayed home that evening. But such a wacky, dark comedy with so many funny scenarios.
I'll probably get blamed for that.
Just so very funny. Great dark comedy. I give this one a 4.5 out of 5. And I really hope we get a Blu-ray release soon. Next movie I watched was 2019's The Banana Splits movie. This is a very wacky, silly horror film. It was better than it had any right to be, honestly. I was entertained from beginning to end. Definitely enjoyed this one. I give this a 3 out of 5. Next movie I watched was 1998's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, directed by Terry Gilliam. Heard lots of things about this throughout the years, just had never gotten around to watching it, and yeah, this movie is crazy. It is a psychedelic trip from beginning to end. Johnny Depp and Benicio del Toro are both fantastic here. This is definitely one I could see myself revisiting. You have to just be prepared for how wild of a ride this movie is, but I give this a 4 out of 5. Next movie I watched is from 2020, and that is Love and Monsters. We checked this out on 4K. This stars Dylan O'Brien. This one looked like a lot of fun, and it definitely delivered. It's an apocalyptic movie where bugs have basically mutated into monsters, and it's a very dangerous world to live in. And Dylan O'Brien, who's not the strongest warrior or hunter of the group, decides to venture out and try and find his girlfriend, who he hasn't seen in years. And it's kind of just his journey in getting there and all the craziness he encounters along the way. I had a ton of fun with this movie. The effects were surprisingly really good. Again, just tons and tons of fun. If you're looking for a fun, like, creature feature apocalyptic movie, check this one out. It's well worth your time. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with this one, 4 out of 5. Next, I checked out 1989's True Believer. This stars Robert Downey Jr. and James Woods. I thought it was a well done law thriller. James Woods and Robert Downey Jr. are both fantastic here. I think this one's well worth your time if you are into these kind of movies. I give this a 3.5 out of 5. Next, I watched 2009's Mary and Max. This is a claymation feature with the lead voice being Toni Collette. This is more of an adult-themed animated film, one that was selected for Sundance in 2009. But I thought this was a really well-done film. Great performances, really interesting story. Definitely one I could see myself watching again. This I give 4 out of 5. Next movie I watched, this is a rewatch of one of my favorites from 2014, and that is Laggies, directed by the great Lynn Shelton. This is actually the only Lynn Shelton feature in which she didn't write, so it doesn't quite have the same amount of magic as some of her other films, but I think she did a great job directing it. The cast is great here. You got Keira Knightley, Chloe Grace Moretz, and Sam Rockwell. They have some great chemistry. I think it's a really enjoyable kind of rom-com mixed with coming-of-age tale. I give this one a 4.5 out of 5, one of my favorites. And we have yet another Woody Allen film, and that's 1978's Interiors. Another really well done drama. I think this one had kind of a different feel from some of his others of that era. Great performances, great writing. Yeah, I'm not sure what else to say about this one other than I really enjoyed it. I give this 4 out of 5. Next movie I checked out was on Netflix, and that's 2018's The Land of Steady Habits. This film basically follows Anders, who, after leaving his wife and his job to go and find some happiness, he finds himself struggling and facing a lot of difficulties in doing so. I thought this was a really great performance from Ben Mendelsohn, who is a very underrated actor. It also featured a great supporting cast, including Edie Falco and Thomas Mann and Connie Britton, 3 of my favorites. Overall, I thought this was a really great character study. I'd probably give this a 4 out of 5. Definitely recommend checking it out on Netflix. Next movie I checked out was on Amazon Prime, and that is 2017's I'm Not Here. It's directed by Michelle Schumacher, who's married to J.K. Simmons. It also stars J.K. Simmons and Sebastian Stan, supporting cast of Maika Monroe, Mandy Moore, and Max Greenfield. I thought the cast was really great in this, but I feel like the story struggled to get to where it wanted to at a few points. I think that I might appreciate it more on future watches and kind of prepare myself for kind of a fantasy element in the film that I wasn't prepared for the first time. But on first watch, I give this a 3 out of 5. So after a really terrible year in 2020, Andrew and I decided to begin 2021 we would treat ourselves to a brand new TV. We got an OLED, which we're very excited about. I had 4K for a few years but hadn't quite taken the leap to OLED, but we finally did, and we've been really happy with the TV. But the first day that we got it, we had to check out some 4Ks. We had to check out some reference quality stuff to really see what our TV could do. So these next few watches are kind of us doing that. The first thing we watched on our TV is actually a rewatch of 2019's 1917, of course directed by Sam Mendes. This is a fantastic war film, probably one of my favorites. It's a spectacle in of itself in the way that it was filmed, but you know, emotionally it's really well done and great performances from our two leads. I really enjoyed this film and it looked fantastic on 4K. Definitely reference quality. If you are new to OLED, one of the biggest draws of OLED over just regular old 4K LED is the ability to have really dark black levels. I mean, almost true black on your screen. So we picked 1917 as our first watch because we knew that there was a lot of dark nighttime scenes that would really showcase that, and it definitely did. And it just looked fantastic, sounded fantastic. It's a great film, one that I can see myself revisiting every few years. Love 1917. This is a 5 out of 5 film for me. Then we rewatched one of our favorite DC films, and that's 2016's Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. This, of course, is the Ultimate Edition. Andrew and I both really enjoyed this film. I think that it's really well done, one of the better DC movies, and it looks great on 4K, reference quality for sure. 4.5 out of 5. And then this next one was a long overdue rewatch and another one that just looked absolutely beautiful on our new TV, and that is Blade Runner 2049, directed by the great Denis Villeneuve, one of my favorite directors. This film is beautifully shot. It's very slow paced, and I think you kind of have to be prepared for that, but it's well worth your time. It's well worth the journey and the time invested into this story, and if nothing else, it's a visual treat to look at. This is a 5 out of 5 film for me. Next movie we watched was a Netflix original, and that's 2020's Pieces of a Woman. Really wanted to check this one out because I'd heard so many good things about Vanessa Kirby's performance in this film, and she definitely did not let me down. I can definitely see her getting an Oscar nomination for her performance here. It's a story of a home birth that goes terribly wrong and the struggle that the mother goes through following what happens, and it's just a truly heartbreaking performance and very realistic take on what a mother might go through in this type of situation. I think she did an absolutely fantastic job. The movie, not as good as her performance. Thought that it was a pretty good movie, but her performance definitely elevated it. So overall, I would give this a 4 out of 5. And another watch to really showcase our TV was 1999's The Matrix. Movie looks awesome on 4K. One of the most ambitious sci-fi films to come out in the last 30 years. I just think it's a great movie. 4 out of 5 for me. Next movie I watched was on Amazon Prime. And speaking of the great Denis Villeneuve, it was 2009's Polytechnic. After watching Blade Runner 2049, I realized I needed to go back and watch some of his films that I had not yet seen, and this is one of them. This is a dramatization of the Montreal Massacre of 1989. Such a tragic story that I actually didn't know much about. But there are some great performances in this film. The cinematography was beautiful. This film is all in black and white, and I think that it really added to kind of the emotional feeling of just being drained of everything in experiencing this awful story. But yeah, just a fantastic film. This one I give a 4.5 out of 5. Every time I watch a Denis Villeneuve film, it just solidifies him as one of my absolute favorite directors. Now, one of my obsessions over the last month or so has been watching mumblecore films. For those of you that don't know what mumblecore is, I'll go ahead and quickly read the Wikipedia definition for you. It's a subgenre of independent film characterized by naturalistic acting and dialogue, sometimes improvised, oftentimes improvised, I think. Low budget film production, and emphasis on dialogue over plot, and to focus on the personal relationships of people in their 20s and 30s. I know some people don't like the term mumblecore because they feel like it oversimplifies just a genre of film, but I feel like it kind of describes a lot of these movies that I've been watching lately. Some people that come to mind when I think of mumblecore would be Joe Swanberg, Lynn Shelton, the Duplass brothers. They're kind of great at doing this. So yeah, I have a lot of watches over the next little bit here that would probably fall under the mumblecore genre. The first one is Nights and Weekends from 2008. This is directed by Joe Swanberg and stars Joe Swanberg and Greta Gerwig. I really liked this movie. Quick disclaimer, I know mumblecore is not for everyone, and I know Joe Swanberg is not for everyone. However, I kind of fall where I really love these kinds of movies. Again, I love dialogue-driven films. I love films that feel very real, and when you have people that are just improvising and focusing on the relationships between characters, you definitely get a lot of that. And Nights and Weekends is just a great example of mumblecore and how good it can be. Greta Gerwig was in several of these movies actually, and I think that she did a really good job of bringing this character to life and giving it some realness, and enjoyed this one quite a bit. I'd probably give it a 4 out of 5. Next movie I watched is also from 2008, and that is Baghead. This is directed by the Duplass brothers. Side note on the Duplass brothers, I just finished their book Like Brothers. So good. Definitely recommend checking it out if you're a fan of the Duplass brothers or just filmmaking in general. It's a great read. But this is an early Duplass brothers film. It definitely falls into that mumblecore genre again. This is a really fun movie though. This group of young struggling actors decide that they'll just go ahead and make their own movie so that they can have a starring role finally. And they decide to go into the woods and film a low budget horror film, and then of course some things start happening for real and it ends up being kind of an awkward, funny situation. But yeah, this is a really fun mumblecore film, an early one from the Duplass brothers. Give this one 3.5 out of 5. Another person that really mastered that mumblecore feel in one of his first features is Barry Jenkins, and I watched his 2008 film Medicine for Melancholy. Sorry, this DVD is a former library rental, so it's a terrible cover. I have to do a new cover for this, but this was a fantastic film. Another one that does a great job of just showing a very real feeling relationship between two people, and some really interesting dynamics. This one I give 4 out of 5. Next I watched 2003's The Matrix Reloaded on 4K. I had actually never seen this sequel, so it was fun to check out. Didn't enjoy it quite as much as The Matrix, but still good nonetheless. I give this 3.5 out of 5. Next movie I watched was on MUBI. I actually just signed up for the streaming service. If you're looking for some real cinephile level films to check out on streaming, definitely do so. I think it's only 99 cents for your first 3 months. But the first movie I checked out was 2007's Unrelated, another one that felt very improvised and focused on the characters' relationships. This has a young Tom Hiddleston in it. Overall, I enjoyed this one. The performances were really good. The writing was very good as well. I'd give this 3.5 out of 5. Another one that I checked out on MUBI, this is 2015's Songs My Brothers Taught Me. This is the directorial debut from Chloe Zhao, who directed The Writer and Nomadland. Just like Writer and Nomadland, this is very slow paced and very focused on the characters. But it's very well done. I enjoyed this one almost as much as her other 2 films. I'd probably give this 4 out of 5. Another mumblecore watch, this is 2011's Uncle Kent, directed by Joe Swanberg. It stars Kent Osborne, who's in a few of Joe Swanberg's films. I believe this one was on AMC+, but this is another one that I really enjoyed. Sorry, there's not too much to say about these mumblecore films. It's an acquired taste. If you like one, you probably like some of the others. But I did enjoy this one. I think that Kent is a really good actor for this type of film, and I think this one had kind of a fun plot that led to a lot of awkward and interesting dynamics between the characters. This one I'd probably give a 3.5 out of 5. Next movie I watched was 2008's Middle of Nowhere. This is a pretty under the radar coming of age film. I mostly checked it out because it stars Anton Yelchin, who I love, really miss. I talk about him often on the channel. But I thought this was a really cute, well done coming of age film. If you enjoy coming of age films, it's definitely worth your time. I give it a 3.5 out of 5. Next movie I watched was 2012's Anna Karenina, directed by Joe Wright, starring Keira Knightley. I thought this movie was really beautifully shot. I thought it was a a very unique take on editing as well. Kind of to transition from scene to scene, they made it seem like they were changing the stage up, which I thought was really cool. Made it feel like it was like you were watching a stage play, basically. I know a lot of people think that this is one of the lesser Anna Karenina adaptations, but I enjoyed it. I thought there were some really good performances, and again, it was just beautifully shot. Probably give this a 4 out of 5. Next movie I watched was 2018's Chained for Life. This one is available on MUBI. This movie had a very unique feel to it. I can't say I've ever watched a movie that had quite the same feel. There were some great performances, but I think the thing that really shines in this film is the writing. The writing was very, very good. This one I would give a 4 out of 5. Next movie I watched was 2018's Smallfoot. I haven't heard too many people talk about this animated film, but I actually thought this one was really cute. It has a good message and some great animation. Overall, I'd probably give this a 4 out of 5. Next movie I watched was 2009's The Vicious Kind. This one is available on AMC+. This movie stars Adam Scott, Brittany Snow, J.K. Simmons. I'd heard decent things about this before, but I definitely have to say this one really surprised me. I could not believe Adam Scott's performance in this. I really love him as a comedic actor, of course, from like Parks and Recreation. But here he really showed that he has some dramatic chops. This is a very well done character study. If you guys are looking for something to watch, then you guys are fans of Adam Scott, Brittany Snow, and J.K. Simmons, I would definitely recommend this one. I believe it's available on DVD. Wish it was available on Blu-ray, but if you have AMC Plus, you could check it out that way. Again, it's a very, very well done character study. Kind of a dark subject matter, but great performances, great writing. I'd probably give this one a 4.5 out of 5. Next movie I checked out was 2020's One Night in Miami. This is directed by Regina King, and it's already getting a lot of awards attention, and rightfully so. There's some great performances. The writing and direction are great here. If you like films that kind of feel like a stage play, this is definitely one for you. I know that that can be kind of hard for certain audiences to connect with, and I'm still kind of adjusting to this kind of filmmaking, but again, the performances are what really shine here, and if for no other reason, check it out for the performances. I would give this film probably a 4.5 out of 5, and you can check this one out on Amazon Prime. The next movie I watched is a 2020 release, and that is St. Francis. I watched this actually on Starz, but I immediately had to pick up the Blu-ray because I loved this movie so much. This is available from Oscilloscope. I'll link it down below, as well as a few of my other recommendations. But I loved this film. This was recommended to me by a friend on Instagram. Shout out to you, Diva Kimmy. And Stephanie's Movies also recommended it to me. But this movie blew me away. It's such a feel-good film. As always, I love movies that just make you smile, make you feel warm inside, and this movie definitely does that. So this movie basically follows the story of Bridget, a woman in her 30s who's kind of floundering, trying to figure out what she's going to be doing with her life. Unlike many other people her age, she's just a server. She doesn't really have a lot going on in her life. She ends up meeting a guy, gets pregnant, gets an abortion, and then lands herself a job as a nanny. A very feisty and sassy 6-year-old that she gets to nanny for the entire summer. And this movie, first of all, I'll say the performance from our lead is great. I've never seen her before, but I hope to see her in more. This is actually a directorial debut. The direction is great. The writing is great. The performance from our 6-year-old character is so good. I don't know how they got a 6-year-old with such great acting chops, but she's very good here. One thing that I'll say about this is I really love how they are able to normalize, you know, somewhat difficult subject matters to broach, such as postpartum depression and abortion, and they really put these topics on the table and talk about them in a respectful and kind of normal way. Like, it's not a big thing to be talking about them, but again, it just normalizes them, and I think that this movie did a really great job of discussing them in a way that will reach a lot of people. Overall, I really love this movie. I've already watched it twice since I watched it in January, but yeah, just a fantastic film, well worth your time. I would give this 4.5 out of 5, although on future watches it might crawl a little closer to 5 out of 5. Next movie I watched was on Amazon Prime, and that's 2006's We Go Way Back. This is one of Lynn Shelton's first films, if not her first film. It was very ambitious for a first feature. You can definitely see her style beginning to blossom and develop here. I thought it was a really interesting character study. I would probably give this a 4 out of 5. Another movie I checked out on Amazon Prime was 2020's 10 Things We Should Do Before We Break Up. I really like Christina Ricci. That was kind of my main motivation for checking this one out. I can kind of see what they were going for in making a rom-com that's not so run-of-the-mill, very different, but I feel like it kind of failed. I just feel like this story wasn't hashed out as much as it could have been, and not a whole lot happens in this runtime, which is unfortunate because it definitely has some potential, but overall I'd probably give this one a 2.5 out of 5. This next movie I checked out on Amazon Prime but have since purchased it on Blu-ray, and that is 2014's Alex of Venice. This stars Mary Elizabeth Winstead and is directed by Chris Messina. I was kind of looking through the Letterboxd reviews after watching it, and it seems like a lot of people didn't enjoy this one, but I felt quite the opposite. I really enjoyed this one. It's another, you know, kind of character study where not a whole lot happens plot-wise, but you just get to know your character, and I love Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I think that Chris Messina did a really good job with just a nice independent character study for his first feature, and I definitely enjoyed this one. I give it a 4 out of 5. Another MUBI watch and another mumblecore watch is 2011's Art History. This is probably my least favorite of the mumblecore stuff that I checked out in the month of January. It had some redeeming qualities, but overall just not enough happened for this movie to even really be worth your time. I'd probably give it a 2 to 2.5 out of 5. And the next movie I watched was 2007's Hannah Takes the Stairs, directed by Joe Swanberg, stars Mark Duplass, Kent Osborne, and Greta Gerwig. Another really fun take on the mumblecore genre. I probably give this one a 3.5 out of 5. The next two movies are directed by David O. Russell. These are a couple of his earlier films that I had not yet seen. First one is I Heart Huckabees. This came out in 2004. This one stars Jason Schwartzman, Isabelle Huppert, Dustin Hoffman, Lily Tomlin, Jude Law, Mark Wahlberg, Naomi Watts, Isla Fisher. The list goes on. This has a huge cast. This movie was a very off-the-wall type of comedy. Probably one that I need to watch again at some point. It's just totally wacky. I'd probably give it a 3 out of 5 on first watch. And then next I watched his 1996 film Flirting with Disaster. This stars Ben Stiller and Patricia Arquette. This one, on the other hand, I enjoyed quite a bit more on first watch. This is another one of those comedies where everything kind of just goes wrong at every turn, but just so funny. Probably one of the more well-done comedies I've seen of this genre. And Ben Stiller, he's so good at reacting to funny, awkward situations, you know, like in Meet the Parents and whatnot. He's just very good in this genre of comedy. I thought this film was a lot of fun. I'd probably give it a 3.5 out of 5. And the next movie I watched was on HBO Max, and that's 1991's He Said, She Said. This stars Kevin Bacon and Elizabeth Perkins. I thought this was a pretty cute rom-com. Nothing groundbreaking, of course, but it was a fun time. I'd probably give it 3 out of 5. Next movie I watched was 2009's 2012. This is recently released on 4K. The movie looked great. However, this movie was probably worse than I remember it being. I remember it kind of being a run-of-the-mill disaster movie, but this one, it just drags on for far too long, in my opinion. Just not enough happens to warrant a 2.5-hour runtime. Just a very cheesy, over-the-top disaster, end-of-the-world movie. But it did look really good on 4K, so I'm happy that I picked it up and checked out the transfer. But I'd probably give this film 2.5 out of 5. Next movie I watched was on HBO Max, and it's actually my first 2021 film, and that is Lockdown. This stars Anne Hathaway and Chiwetel Ejiofor. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. I'm not sure if I've ever said his name aloud. This movie is directed by Doug Liman. This is one of the many films to feature COVID-19 as a main plot point. Basically, a couple is stuck in lockdown together. They've broken up and they hate each other's guts. And at one point they decide to perform a high-risk jewelry heist. I have to give them credit. The concept is pretty silly, pretty out there, very interesting take on the COVID-19 pandemic, but it unfortunately is not as interesting as the plot makes it sound. I think that our two leads do the best with what they were given, but overall I just didn't think this was a great film. I would definitely say the last half is the more entertaining of the two. They definitely could have sped things up, trimmed things down a little bit, and made it a little more interesting, but overall I give this a 2.5 out of 5. Next movie I watched was 2013's Crystal Fairy and the Magical Cactus. This is a very out there indie film, kind of a psychedelic trip. This stars Michael Cera and Gabby Hoffman. Gabby Hoffman I love. I do kind of feel like Michael Cera was overplayed a bit, especially in these few years where he was just in movie after movie after movie, and he basically plays himself in everything, I feel like, or at least the same character. However, Gabby Hoffman, I love. I think she does a great job here, and it's just a fun kind of road movie, and it's definitely a bit of a trip. I would give this one a 3.5 out of 5. Next movie I watched was 2012's The Dodeca Pentathlon. This is directed by the Duplass brothers. This is a really fun movie, fun concept. Basically two brothers who've never really gotten along and are very competitive with each other decide to have a at-home pentathlon, but they kind of have to keep it under wraps because Mark Duplass's wife is very much against this competitive nature that they have going. Yeah, just a really fun movie, focuses on the characters and does a great job at that. I would give this a 3.5 out of 5. Next movie I watched was 2011's The Artist. Hopefully that's showing up okay. This is one that I've been meaning to watch for a while. It of course won Best Picture, and it's a silent film that came out in 2011, so it's very unique for that. I thought this was beautifully shot. However, the silent film part of it felt a little bit gimmicky, but once I kind of moved past that, I definitely did enjoy it. Again, it's beautifully shot. Some great performances for the fact that they couldn't talk, but overall I'd probably give it a 4 out of 5. Not Best Picture worthy in my opinion. Next movie I watched was a rewatch. This is 2010's Unstoppable, directed by Tony Scott. I think that Tony Scott made a lot of really fun, entertaining movies, and this one is no exception. Just a really fun, high-octane thriller with a lot going on and just entertaining from beginning to end. And Denzel Washington and Chris Pine are both great in this. If you're just looking for a fun action movie, look no further than Unstoppable. It's a great flick. I give this a 4 out of 5. Next movie I watched was on Amazon Prime. That's 2018's Unlovable. This stars Charlene de Guzman, who I've never seen before, and the great John Hawkes. I think he's a really underrated actor. But basically our main character here, she's a sex and love addicted woman who is trying to battle this addiction and kind of the struggles and relationships that are formed while doing so. I thought this was a really well done film, great character study. It's basically a comedy that tackles and broaches subjects that are not very comedic, but it does a great job at that. It did a really good job of taking a really serious subject matter and making it funny without making fun of it, and I think they did a great job with that. Overall, I give this a 4 out of 5, and it's definitely one that's worth your time. Next movie I watched was on CBS All Access, which is soon to be Paramount Plus, and that is the prize winner of Defiance, Ohio. This is from 2005 and stars Julianne Moore. So this was a really interesting biopic. Julianne Moore is always fantastic. No exception here. She's great. I give this one a 3.5 out of 5. Next, I watched 2017's The Boy Downstairs on Hulu. This stars Zosia Mamet from Girls. This is a really well done indie romance. I thought there were some great performances here, great believable chemistry between the actors. And if you just like independent romance films, this one will be worth your time. I definitely recommend it. This I would give 3.5 out of 5. Next thing I watched was a mini series on Netflix, and that's Night Stalker: The Hunt for a Serial Killer. I actually don't know too much about the Night Stalker, so this was interesting to hear about the case. This was definitely from the perspective of the detectives, very focused on the case and the whole process of finding him. One criticism I saw of it is that people wanted to see them focus more on kind of the psyche of the killer and the psychological aspect of it. And I could definitely agree with that. I would like to see more of that in the future, but it was interesting to hear about the case and how they found this Night Stalker. Overall, I would give this one a 4 out of 5. Next movie I watched was 2008's Over Her Dead Body. Mostly check this one out because I love Lake Bell and Paul Rudd. This is a very silly comedy. Basically, Paul Rudd is with Eva Longoria and they're about to get married, and she ends up passing away. And she comes back as a ghost haunting Lake Bell, who is attempting to date Paul Rudd. So yeah, it's just about as silly and dumb as it sounds. It was an okay time passer. I'd probably give it between 2 and 2.5 out of 5. Another mumblecore watch was 2002's Funny Haha. This is available on MUBI. I enjoyed this one quite a bit. I thought our lead was very good. Another one that's just very good at focusing on the characters and their dynamics together. I give this one a 3.5 out of 5. Next thing I watched is not a movie but a TV special, and that is the latest Euphoria special called Fuck Anyone Who's Not a Sea Blob. This one focuses on Jules' side of the story, follow up to Rue's part. This is of course directed by Sam Levinson, and similar to the first part of the Euphoria special, we are just focusing on Jules and it's her talking for a long time, but it's so well written that you don't mind that it's just one person in a room talking and kind of going over their experiences. I think that Hunter Schafer did a really good job. She actually helped co-write this episode, and it was very real, very raw, very emotional, very well done. I'd give this a 4.5 out of 5. Can't wait to see more episodes of Euphoria in the future. Next watch is kind of a silly one, but we checked out Kittenhood from 2015 on HBO Max. It's a documentary that follows the story of 3 kittens in different parts of the world and kind of them growing up. You know me, I'm obsessed with cats. I have 6 of them, and it's just always fun to learn more about cats, and it's always fun to look at cute kittens. So how can you go wrong with something like this? I give it 4 out of 5. Next movie I watched was a rewatch, and that's 1997's Vegas Vacation. I love all of the vacation movies. I think they're all a lot of fun. Christmas Vacation and the original are my favorite. But this one is a lot of fun, no exception to the rule. I'd probably give this one a 3.5 out of 5. Always lots of fun to watch. Next one is a rewatch, and that is 2020's Greenland. I talked about this one a little bit more in my last video, in my last Everything I Watched video. Just watched this one again because my family was in town and they wanted to see it. But overall, it's a great disaster flick, a lot better than I was expecting it to be. I would give this one a 4 out of 5. Next movie I watched was 2020's Songbird. This is yet another pandemic themed movie, and this one was not good at all. I honestly could not figure out what they were doing with the plot. The story was just so thin, very convoluted. Didn't really enjoy this one at all. I'd probably give it a 2 out of 5. Next movie I watched was 1999's But I'm a Cheerleader. I actually bought the new uncut edition on iTunes. I hope that they release this on physical media at some point because this is an awesome movie. A very well done satire, dark comedy starring Natasha Lyonne, Clea Duvall. I think everyone in this film was great. A really fun look and fun perspective into conversion therapy, which is not a very fun subject matter, but somehow they are able to broach that subject in a lighthearted way. And I thought this movie was really well done. I give it a 4 out of 5. I talk about this movie a lot on the channel. It's my #1 comfort movie. And when my family was in town, I wanted to take them out to do something fun, but also something that'd be really safe for us all to do in the middle of a pandemic. So I decided to rent an entire movie theater in my local AMC. It was only 99 bucks to do so. And we were able to watch one of our favorite movies to watch as a family, and that is 2011's Bridesmaids. We all love this movie. So laugh out loud hilarious, and it was so fun to see it on the big screen again, you know, just like I did back in 2011. This is a 5 out of 5 comedy for me, and it was a lot of fun to see in our own private theater. All right, we are almost done, guys. Almost gotten through all of these watches. Next movie I watched was 2020's Honest Thief, starring Liam Neeson. I really do like Liam Neeson, but all of his movies are very run-of-the-mill, very similar to each other. I feel like he's just had several that have just had very similar plots. That being said, though, I always enjoy watching them. And this one was a fun time, a fun little thriller. I'd probably give this a 3 out of 5. Next movie I watched was on VOD, and that's 2020's Let Him Go. Been wanting to see this one since it was released and finally got around to watching it. I thought this is a really well done Western. It's very slow paced, but very beautifully shot with some great performances. I would give this one a 4 out of 5. Next movie I watched was a rewatch, and that's 2020's Peninsula. This is kind of the pseudo sequel to Train to Busan. This was met with a lot of negativity. I know not very many people enjoyed this one. However, I enjoyed it for what it was. I thought it was a pretty decent zombie thriller, definitely not anywhere near as good as Train to Busan, but enjoyable nonetheless, and it looked great on 4K. This one I would give a 4 out of 5. And we have another rewatch here, and that's 2020's The Rental. This stars Allison Brie, Dan Stevens, Shia Van, and Jeremy Allen White. This is directed by one of my favorite actors, Dave Franco. I did a review on this one if you guys want to check that out. But I really enjoyed this movie. Really well done psychological horror film, and I'm really excited to see what else Dave Franco does in the future. But this one I give it 4.5 out of 5. Next, I checked out 2020's horror film, The Dark and the Wicked. This is a very eerie, creepy horror film. It has a very secluded setting, a lot of really scary, jumpy moments, but not really jump scares, just a very eerie, atmospheric horror film, which is my favorite kind of horror. But I won't say too much about the plot because I don't want to give anything away. But if you're looking for a really well done 2020 horror film, look no further than The Dark and the Wicked. I would give this one 4 out of 5. Next movie we checked out is technically a 2021 release, and that is Our Friend. This stars Casey Affleck and Dakota Johnson and Jason Segel. Basically, a man finds out that his terminally ill wife has 6 months to live, and he welcomes the support of their best friend to come and live in their home and take care of their children and kind of be an emotional support and rock for them. And this was a very emotional and sad movie, as you can imagine, but I thought the performances were really well done. Casey Affleck and Dakota Johnson were great, but I think the real shiny star here is Jason Segel. It was really nice to see him in a much more dramatic role. He's a great comedic actor, but I think he did a great job here. And again, it's just such a sad, heartbreaking story, but also heartwarming at the same time. Just seeing this friend that was so willing to step up and be there for his friends and in their time of need. So definitely one that I would recommend you guys check out. It's available on VOD right now. I would give this one a 4 out of 5. Another VOD watch for us, and that's 2020's News of the World. This of course stars Tom Hanks. Another kind of slow-paced western, similar vein to Let Him Go. However, this one I did not enjoy as much. There were some really cool scenes in there, but overall I just thought that this movie dragged and dragged and dragged and just didn't have a huge point to it. You know, I'm okay with slow-paced movies, however I just thought that this movie was, you know, ranked more on the edge of boring than slow-paced. However, Andrew really enjoyed this film. This is one that we were really split on, actually. I think he gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And I gave it 3 out of 5 on first watch. So when it comes out on 4K, we're definitely gonna watch it again. I'm gonna go in with an open mind, prepared for the slow pace, and who knows, maybe I'll change my mind, but as of right now, I give it 3 out of 5. Next movie we watched was 2020 Sputnik. This is available on Hulu. This is actually a Russian film. I went into this kind of expecting it to be an Alien ripoff, but it definitely wasn't. It actually blew me away at how interesting and original this concept was. I'll just go ahead and read the plot to you guys so I don't spoil anything. At the height of the Cold War, a Soviet spacecraft crash lands after a mission gone awry, leaving the commander as its only survivor. After a renowned Russian psychologist is brought in to evaluate the commander's mental state, it becomes clear that something dangerous may have come back to Earth with him. So yeah, definitely go into this one blind. Don't know too much about it besides that, and I think you guys will come out satisfied. I give this one a 4 out of 5. And the last thing that I watched in January was a rewatch of 2020's Promising Young Woman. This is another one that I talked about a bit in my last Everything I Watch video, if you guys want to hear some more thoughts about it. But it's my favorite movie of 2020 by far. Keep an eye out for a video coming up soon where I'm going to talk about all of my favorite films of 2020. So yeah, that is everything that I watched in the month of January. I know this was another long-winded video, so thanks for sticking with me. Real quick before we go, my least favorite watch of the month was Songbird. The movie is just not even really worth your time. But my favorite movie of the month, or you know, my number one recommendation to you guys would be St. Francis. Definitely seek this one out. Again, I'll link it down in the description below. But yeah, if you guys check out any of these movies based on my recommendation, please let me know what you thought of them. What was your favorite thing that you watched in January? I would love to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe, like this video, hit the bell to hear when we upload new videos. There will be a few more coming this week, so keep an eye out. And thanks as always for the support, and we will see you on the next one.